So, if you're not familiar with the story from Genesis that I'm carving today, I think that it'll surprise you, maybe even shock you. As I carved it, I found myself thinking, I can't believe that the ancient Hebrews actually wrote this down and put it into text. It has everything a modern soap opera would have: drunkenness, nudity, family quarrels, humiliation, anger, lashing out, all culminating in the slavery of an innocent person. Briefly, here's what happens in the story, and later we'll look at the text. After the flood, Noah becomes a farmer, and he plants a vineyard and makes wine. One day he gets blind drunk and ends up naked in his tent. Ham, his son, finds him and tells his brothers, who cover him up. But when Noah wakes up and finds out what happened, he gets furious that he was discovered naked and drunk in his tent. And he decides to punish his grandson, Canaan, by cursing him and making him the slave of his brothers and his uncles. So the unfairness here is obvious. Canaan didn't do anything. So why curse him? And the answer tells us a lot about ourselves as humans and as political animals. Welcome to Carving the Bible. My name is Francisco, and on this channel I carve the Bible word for word and react to the passage I'm carving. And in this video I'm working on Genesis 9:17 to chapter 10 verse 2. First, I want to say that I don't blame Noah for getting drunk. In the story, he has gone through a hugely traumatic experience, the destruction of the world. Almost all that he knew, including his friends, his neighbors, his village, most animals, all of civilization, almost all of creation destroyed in a huge flood. Gone. End of story. And when it's all done, Noah just broke. There's no surprise here. I think it's pretty well known that sometimes people try to numb themselves to the pain of trauma by drinking. If there is a surprise, it's not that he got drunk. It's that the story actually tells us about his drunkenness. So this is a very human moment. Noah's weakness is laid bare, both figuratively and literally. He feels humiliated and shamed to be found naked and blind drunk. And when we're ashamed, sometimes we look for someone to blame, even the wrong person. So what's striking is that this is the very first generation after the flood. The world's been reset. Noah has been described as righteous, and already things are going wrong. But before we go farther, here's the full passage that I'm carving today, so you can hear exactly how this moment is described in the text. And God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth." And the sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. These three are the sons of Noah, and from these was the population of the whole earth spread abroad. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and he uncovered himself in his tent. And Ham the father of Canaan saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren outside. And Shem and Japheth took the upper garment, and both laid it upon their shoulders, and went backwards, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were turned away, that they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and learned what his youngest son had done to him. And he said, "Cursed be Canaan, let him be a bondman of bondmen to his brethren." And he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his bondman. Let God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his bondman." And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. And all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. And these are the generations of the sons of Noah: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And to them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth: Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tiras. So in the story, Noah curses Canaan, his grandson, not Ham, the one who found him, and makes him into a slave. This is awfully strange, and it seems that the real reason for it is very manipulative. Now, to be fair, Some people argue that slave is too harsh a translation for the Hebrew word. And translations in the Bible do vary, ranging from servant to bondman to slave. But I think the important phrase is from verse 25, bondman of bondmen. This is an exaggerated construction, meaning the lowest of the low, which is arguably a slave. It's the opposite of the King of Kings, which is like a super king above all the other kings. Now, this curse is also repeated 3 times in verses 25, 26, and 27. This is not a light, go do some chores kind of punishment. Noah even brings God into it to reinforce the punishment. He says in verse 26, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his bondman." The text doesn't say that God cursed Canaan, Noah does. But it seems Noah is using "blessed be the Lord" in an effort to create a divine sounding judgment. So instead of addressing the real offender, Noah lashes out at someone who is weaker, more distant, someone who is less able to defend himself. And this kind of scapegoating is not uncommon human behavior. People do it when they feel powerless or humiliated. We try to find someone else, someone safer, to bear the blame. But that explanation, although human, does not feel complete, and I'll tell you why. Why make Noah look so petty and vindictive right at the start of this new beginning? Why record this story of humiliation and unfairness in your texts? Why make this part of your story as a people? It doesn't really make sense unless we shift our perspective. There's another explanation that is more calculating, but also more believable. What if this wasn't just Noah speaking in anger? What if this story was told later to justify conquest, land taking, and enslavement? Many scholars believe that Genesis 9 is a retroactive myth, a way of explaining and morally justifying the subjugation of the Canaanites. It's a type of Bronze Age political propaganda meant to explain and excuse conquest. I know that sounds a little far-fetched, but it explains a lot. Let's start with the name of Noah's grandson, Canaan. Both in Hebrew and English, it's exactly the same name as the territory that the Israelites would later conquer, the land of Canaan. And that's not a coincidence. Canaan in this story is not only a child. In Genesis, it seems that he's the ancestor of the Canaanite people. Remember that according to the story, all the nations of the world emerged from this small group of people, the descendants of Noah. Genesis 9:25 says, "Cursed be Canaan, let him be a bondman of bondmen to his brethren." So who are these brothers? Later in chapter 10 we find out. The other sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, and Put. The names of those brothers aren't random. They point to real nations in the region. Cush refers to ancient Nubia or Ethiopia south of Egypt. Mizraim is the Hebrew name for Egypt. And Put most likely refers to Libya or North Africa. And his cousins' names are also tied to nations in the region. And I'll cover those relationships more in detail in my next video when I carve those genealogies. I'll put a link at the end of this video if you'd like to watch it. But in other words, the curse isn't just about a family. It reflects an attempt to put the people of Canaan beneath the great nations of the region. The names of the people involved in this story tie the curse to the world as Israel knew it, making the story feel less like a family feud and much more like a political message. The curse becomes a narrative foundation that the Canaanites are inferior, destined to serve or be slaves. Even Noah's nudity seems to be part of the propaganda. Why mention that detail? Why embarrass your founding ancestor in that way? Could it be to tie the hint of moral depravity to the lineage of Ham through Canaan? Maybe to have an early indication that the Canaanites are immoral, to later bring it up as an excuse for conquest? I think those are real possibilities. So what do you think? Is this strange little story about human weakness about how humans handle shame and power when they feel exposed? Or is it a myth crafted to justify domination, a piece of political propaganda, laying a foundation for invasion and conquest? If this curse really shaped how Israel thought about the Canaanites, it's one of the most influential and damaging stories in all of Genesis. A story that still echoes today, 3,000 years later.